Hi everyone, it's Kelly from Kelly's Bead Boutique. So one of the comments that I read most often on my comment feed is, can you create more men's jewelry? Well, I have to admit that it's not something I've ever really done very much of. I have a husband who only wears his wedding ring and no other jewelry, so I don't really have anybody to bounce ideas off of. So I got creative with some leather, and I think I've come up with something that both guys and gals are gonna love. So if you want to see what I'm making today, come and join me. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to be using today is this bead board. If you don't have one of these, you could use the lid of a shoebox, or if you have a macrame board, you just need some way to be able to secure this. You could also tape it down. It's just harder for me to show you if it's taped down, but if that's the only thing that you can do, go ahead and just use the tape. But for me, I'm going to be using this little bead board, and I also have one of these little clips. I have two pieces of 2mm leather, and these are about 65 inches long. And I'm using contrasting colors because I really like the way that the colors contrast. It makes for a little more interesting bracelet, and also it makes it easier to figure out where you're going on these knots. I also am using one of these little distressed buttons. And of course, we're going to be adding some barrel knots, so I have to have a barrel knot tube. And then I'm using these little distressed oval beads from Tiara Cast, which go so nicely with this button. And we're going to be using some GS Hypo cement. And pretty much the only tools we're going to need are a pair of scissors. And of course, I didn't bring mine, so I have just a pair of cutters. And that's all we're going to need today. So let's get started. So the first thing you have to do is decide how you want to display these leathers. And you know, honestly, it doesn't really matter. They're both going to show. But if you want to have your sort of the color, let's say I like this color the most, the blue, and I want to have it on the outside part like this, I want to make sure that that's the one that I run through the button. So let's do that, and then I'll show you how it all works, and it'll make a little more sense. So I'm just going to find the center by putting the two ends together, and I'm going to take my button. Now these buttons do have two sides in that it's got a little bit of a concave look, and I like to have this on the outside. So that's the way that I'm going to use my button. So I just put one in each side. And being careful not to rub too much on the leather, because you don't want to strip the leather against metal, is I'm going to run that down until it comes to the center. Now I'm going to take that and I'm going to just flip one of these sides up on my little bullnose clip, and I'm going to just pop that through the end. And now I'm going to just attach it. And all this does is just give me a place to make it a little bit more sturdy for, basically it's really for you guys so that you can see what I'm doing. So you could tape this down, I suppose, but I really find this way works nicely. So now I'm going to take my other piece of leather and I'm going to find the center. Now this isn't like a traditional macrame in that we don't have to have anything secured down, like this end doesn't have to be stuck inside because we need our ends loose. So I just want to find the center of this, and now I'm going to run it behind this piece here. So I just kind of get it about where I want it. So then I'm going to pull the sides out so that I can show you clearly what I'm about to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a square knot. All right, so the one on the right, I'm going to take and I'm going to go over top of both of those pieces of leather. And that creates kind of what looks like the start of a P. Now this one that's up here, it has to go over top of that. So now we have that coming over top. Now that one that I just pulled over top needs to go underneath here and up through this hole. So I just kind of take it and pull it like that. Now you can see I'm still holding up here because I don't want those leathers to get offside too much. Like I want to have them still in the center. So I'm just kind of working back and forth until I get that right where I want it. So now I want to leave only about maybe a 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch, somewhere right about there. I don't want to have it jammed right up next to the button because then I won't be able to get it done up, but I don't want it to be too far down either. So the first one's always the hardest, so just take a minute to get it kind of pulled where you want, and now I'll be able to show you a whole lot easier. So that's the first half of a square knot. So now I'm going to take the other side and I'm going to do sort of a reverse P or a Q, and then I'm going to pull that over top, and then that's going to go up through the hole like that. And we're just going to tighten that up. Now this is fairly skookum leather in that it's skookum. Does that make me sound really old? It's pretty heavy duty, but you always want to be careful when you're pulling on leather that you don't pull it so tight that it breaks. All right, so I'm just getting those all nicely put in there. So there's our first little bits of leather. Okay, so now we're going to create the next section, and that is by making lark head knots. So I'm going to take my other colored leather, and that's why this is easier if you have two different colors of leather. It helps keep it all straight. So I'm going to take the one on the left here, and I'm going to go over top of my left leather, just creating a loop like that. And I'm just going to bring it through like that and pull it up. Super simple. Now I need to repeat that, but in order for this to work as a lark's head knot, I have to create it a little differently in that instead of going over top for the second one, you go underneath. So that's the only difference, is you go underneath and pull that through. And when I pull it tight, you can see now that that made a perfect little lark's head knot. So I'm going to get those out of the way, and I'm going to repeat on the opposite side. So I'm going to go over top of this leather and pull it through. And for me personally, I always find the right one a little harder. I'm not sure why, but I always find it a little bit more awkward. And now for the second part of it, I'm going to go underneath and then pull that through. So this one is pretty simple to do, but the effects are quite lovely. So you just want to make sure that these are nice and snug. And now I'm going to take my second color and pull it down through the middle and pull my other ones to the right. Now we've got our first section of square knots, and we've got our section of lark's head knots. So now I'm going to create another section of square knots. So I'm going to make my P, go over top and then up through that one and tighten that up. And now when I tighten that up, you can see it all wants to buckle. So what I do is I pull this down, and then I'm going to realign these ones so that they're on the sides because they tend to start up here. So I want to pull them down so they're on the side of that knot. And then I pull it tight, and then I give this one more little tug. And you can see when I'm pulling on this whole thing, I'm holding onto it and tugging so that it doesn't all go out of whack. Because if I just pull this, that's all going to move around. So hold on to it and give it a little tug. And now you can see it's created a little section there. That's the first half of our square knot. So now I need to do the other side. So go over top on the left side, over there, and up through the hole. And tighten that up. So now you can see we've got a completed section here. We've got a square knot, two lark's head knots, and a square knot. So now we're going to take one of our little distressed ovals, and we're going to run that through. And now I'm going to create another square knot. So over top, always bring that over that one that you've just brought over the leather. This has to go over top and then up through the hole. Now, when you do this one, you don't want to do it so tight that you tip this. So if I pull it really tight, what happens is that little oval that I use tends to want to buckle. So I pull back just ever so slightly on it so that it's encasing it, but it's not tipping that over at all. Now I'm going to do the second half. So go over top and over that tail and up through the hole. And this second knot is the one that you want to tighten up to make sure that that's really nice and secure. So that just adds a little bit of a decorative feature. Now I did say at the beginning of this video that I thought this was the perfect unisex bracelet because all leather bracelets are great for both sexes, I think. Now if a man's looking at this and he's going, well, that's kind of nice, but maybe that adds too much of a feminine touch, just leave it out. Just do these two sections without the bead in there, and I think it would be a fabulous looking men's bracelet. So. All right, so now we're going to create another one of these sections here. So we're going to go over on the left, over top, and run it through that hole and bring that up and tighten that up. And then the second one goes underneath and through the hole. And then tighten that up. And then pull those out of the way so that you know which ones you're working with. So on the right-hand side, it goes over top of that leather and then through the hole. And then this one goes underneath and then through the hole. and you just want to tighten those up. Now I bring those middle ones down, and I'm going to start creating my square knots again. So you go with the right one over top, then bring that one over top of that tail and up through the hole. And then now you're going to bring this right one down, bring the left one down, and you're going to tighten them up and just kind of tighten. It's sort of like I'm tightening everything up, just kind of doing a little bit at a time, making sure it's where I want it to be. And there we go. That's exactly what I want. And now I'm going to do the left side. So put that over that tail and up through the hole. Okay, so now there's our first square knot. And now we're going to put on our little distressed oval. And we're going to create the first half of our square knot. So I'm going to go over top of that, bring this one over top of that tail, and that goes up through the hole. And again, you don't want to tighten this one up so much that it alters the shape of this whole thing. So I want to pull that around, but I'm not tightening it up super tight. I'm going to make it a little tighter on the second half. So bring that over top of the tail, and bring that up through that hole. And now this one is the one that I tighten up nice and snug. And you can always pull your leathers around if something's sticking out and you're not really, digging it there. You can kind of move it around. Okay, so I'll show you one more of this little lark's head knot. So bring these off. Always make sure they're separated. So the one on the left, I'm going to go over top and bring it through that hole, pull it up. In the second half, I go underneath, and then so it goes underneath, and then it comes over top and down through the hole. And you'll know right away if you've done it wrong. Sometimes when I'm not paying attention, I look and go, well, that doesn't look like a lark's head knot. So a lark's head knot should look just like that, where it comes through and then comes back out. You can see they're sort of mirrored images of each other, but it's got this loop over top there. So I'm going to go over top of that tail and then bring it up through that hole. Tighten it up. And on the second half, I go underneath and then bring it through that hole. And now I'm going to do my macrame. Not my macrame, that's what we're doing this whole thing. I'm going to do my square knot. Sometimes trying to teach and do is not always the easiest thing. I'm trying to get my brain 2 steps ahead to know what I have to do here. Oh, goodness. Okay, so again, kind of pull it tight. You want to pull these down on the sides. Always make sure to pull them down, otherwise it just doesn't look right. And stick your fingers right on top of there and give it a good little snug there. All right, so we've done our first half, and you can see how I do this. I literally just go like this. I don't make a big production out of it. I do it right in my fingers, so it goes pretty fast once you can figure it out. And then we're just going to carry on. So that's how we get the first part of our bracelet. And I'm loving this color combination. So I'm going to show you how to finish this one off. Now to get this off, what we're going to do is we're going to undo this clip, and it can be a little awkward to pull out. So what I do is I open this up, just kind of take that little bullnose clip right out of there, and then you can slip that out. So now I have one off camera here that I completed last night, and now I'm going to run that up through there and then put it back in the clip and do it back up. Okay, so let's finish this off. So one of the things you have to think about is sizing. So this one here has 7 of these beads in the middle, and this will make about a 6 3/4 inch bracelet. Mine, I have 8 of these beads, and that makes about a 7 3/4 inch bracelet. Where you're going to have from the end to the end here. So this is our last set of square knots, and then we're going to be adding a succession of barrel knots, and I'll explain why. From there into here is about 1.5 inches. So what you're going to do is you're going to wrap it around your wrist, and once you have about 1.5 inches there, then you know you've got enough in length. Now let's say that you've got too much where you're going to have to pull back and maybe add some on. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to add barrel knots here to finish off the leathers and bring them together. So if you need to add some length, this is a really good place to do it. Instead of doing 2 barrel knots here, you could do 4. You could do 4, 4, and 4, and that would probably bring it down another inch. So you're going to have to play around with, can't tell you exactly how it's going to end up in sizing, because also it depends on how tight you make your weaves here too. So there's some variables in this, but you want to make sure that you've left yourself a good inch to inch and a half there. This one is a little bit big for me, but I actually like my bracelets a little larger, and this one will probably stretch a little bit too when it's worn. So if it doesn't fit you and you're going, oh gosh, I wish it was just a little bit tighter, pull on it a little bit. And I mean, obviously you don't want to pull too much, but pull on a little bit and it will give it a little bit of extra length. So I'm going to show you how to finish that off. So what I'm going to need is my barrel knot tube. So, and I should mention, when if you take this off and then you decide you have to put it back on and make some more knots, you want to make sure you put it on the right way. So if you look at it, this is the upside down part. And you can see how this looks completely different than if I turn it this way. I don't see those little bumps. So you want to make sure that if you have to put it back in to do anything on it, you've got it the right direction. So you should always want to see these bumps that are going down the middle. If you can see, if you're doing it this way, those bumps aren't in there. So always make sure that's on there correctly. Okay, so now I want to finish this off. So I need to get these 2 leathers together so that they're sort of married up. Otherwise, I've got these kind of floating out there. So I'm going to create some barrel knots. So I'm going to take my tube and I'm going to place it in between my 2 exterior ones. And I'm going to take the most outer one there and I'm going to wrap it around once and just twice. Normally I do 3 barrel knots, but on this one I'm going to do twice. And I'm going to put it through the back end and pull that out. And then I'm going to push that up so that it's right next to that last square knot that we did. And I want to have that pretty tight in there. Nice and tight, because I don't want that to come out at all. Okay, so that's now together. Now I'm going to turn it over and repeat on the other side. So take my tube, place it in between, wrap that around once, twice. Now you will have a lot more leather than I've got here, because this is actually the second time I've done this today, because I filmed the entire thing, cut all my leather, and then realized my camera wasn't on. So I had to quickly come up with another way of doing this. So I kind of just had to fudge it a little bit. So, you know, nothing's ever easy. I finally carved out a day where I'm filming a whole pile of videos and then, you know, things just don't go right. So, oh well, that's the life. Okay, so now I've got my barrel knots on either side, and what that does is it helps away for these exterior ones that are now in the middle there. It gives them a place to be sort of encompassed. Now again, if you're trying to add some length, this is a perfect place to do it. So instead of doing 2 barrel knots, maybe do 4. You know, you can sort of play around with it to create that little bit of extra length. So now we're going to be brave and hope that I've done this correctly. And I'm going to trim this off. So I'm going to take my cutters and I'm going to trim the exterior ones. So you never want to trim the interior ones, just the exterior ones. And then I'm going to make some more barrel knots. So now I'm going to take my tube and I'm going to wrap around once, twice. And again, if you need to add extra length, do 2, 3, 4, whatever you want to do. Because barrel knots are a good place to add the length on at the end here. Okay, and I'm just going to bring that together. So what this did was it created a way of encompassing this exterior leather and then bringing this together like that. So I want to make sure that's nice and snug. Okay, so now we're going to create our buttonhole. So now I want to lay my button here, and I know that I need my buttonhole to be about that wide. So I'm just going to sort of mentally mark that. And I'm going to place my barrel knot tube in between, and I'm going to create my 2 wrap ending there. So I'll go around once, twice, and then go through the end and bring that through. And what I do is I kind of get it where I need it, and I don't tighten it up too much. I just usually then make sure that I can get my button in there nice and easily, and yeah, it goes through perfectly fine. So then what I do is I take my thumb and I place it right on the other side so that that barrel does not move, or the barrel knot doesn't move, because if you pull on it, it will definitely move. So now I'm tightening up with the one that, like, there's one that makes it move and there's one that makes it tight. So you want to make sure that you're pulling on the one that makes it nice and tight. And now I'm going to come in and I'm going to trim that off. And you can leave them long and you can attach things. You can do whatever you want, but I'm trying to keep it really simple because I did say that it was a unisex piece. So now I'm going to take some glue. Now, if you don't like those little cut ends like that, you can always take a Sharpie or something like that and cover those up, but you know, I'm not going to do that on this video. So now we're going to take our glue, and we really want to make sure that we glue this up nicely, especially because if men wear this, they tend to be a little harder on bracelets than women are. No offense, guys, but you know, most men wear them when they shouldn't. So I want to make sure that I'm getting those ends in there nice and tight. And then I want to come in on this one here, and then on the end of this one here, because this is the one that does all the work. So I want to get a little bit on the inside, but I want to get it on the outside. So just make sure any points that you can see where it could come undone is glued. Now this will dry clear so you won't see it, but this is the most important place right here because we've ended that off. If you've done them up tightly, it shouldn't cause any problems, but we're just going to let that dry, and then I'll come back and I'll show you all the completed ones I've got here. Okay, so here's a few of the completed ones that I've got. This is the one that I started at the beginning of the video, and I'm just going to tell you the colors because that is something that I know I will get asked for sure. So this one I've used the antique brass components, and then I've used the natural light brown and then the natural blue, and I think that combination is just so pretty. I love that one. I'm just going to move that up to the side because it's got a lot on it. So now this is another one where I've used the antique pewter, so it's got more of an antique silver kind of a look, and I've used the natural gray and then the natural purple, which is beautiful. Love that one. And then the one that I was wearing is the brighter silver, and it's the natural gray and the natural black. And then the one that I was working on in this finishing project, which is with gold, and then this one is the antique brown and the natural green. So I will give you lots of different color choices. And I think that you guys are really going to like this one. It was so fun to create. I was making this one last night, and I was just watching some old repeats on Netflix. And it's one of those ones that once you get into the groove, it's super, super easy to create. And I think you're going to really love it. So if you want to get your own kit, you just go to the description box below my video. There's a link that will take you directly to my fully secure website. And this one will include the barrel knot tube. I get lots of questions asking, well, if I make this, do I get the barrel knot tube? Anytime you see me making a barrel knot and you order one of our kits, you will get a barrel knot tube included in your kit. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was so much fun to put together. I'm really, really happy with the outcome, and I think you guys will be too. It's really, really great to make. Super easy, and I think it's a very striking bracelet, and I hope that both sexes like it because I've been getting so many requests. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from everybody, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please make sure that you do so. It really does help it out. I want to thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.